Right, Steve. So once again, we haven't got enough time or episodes to go into all your adventures I've written about in your two books. But I did chuckle at the one about the Palace Hotel in Torquay, where you were poleaxed by a girl's friend's handbag.
Yes, yes. Now, you have to realise in those days we had June and July off, and the start of the season we kick off at Newton Abbot on Saturday and Monday, and then Devon and Exeter Wednesday, Thursday. So we used to go and stay, me and Frankham and quite a few other jocks, used to go and stay at the Palace Hotel in Babacoon, just outside Torquay. And they used to treat us like kings here and whatever. But anyway, that first day, the Saturday evening, there was some sort of dinner dance for the jocks in one of the nearby sort of hotels out in the country. So I had organised at the races to go with this girl, right, which I duly did. Took her to the dance and whatever, and I don't know what to say, but anyway, I took her to the car park, and now I had my evil way with her, I suppose you could say. And then I went back into the dance, and I then pulled another bit and took her home back to the hotel. Oh, it's terrible, isn't it? So anyway, the following morning I get a phone call, and it's reception, and saying that there's this lady down in the foyer, and she's quite distraught and very angry. So you better come down and sort it out, Mr. Smith Eccles. So I had a look at the lady and said, yeah, go on, you better go. So I went down, and there she was, and she fuming, and she laid into me, giving me a good old tongue lashing. Unbeknown to me, I didn't realise she had a friend with her. And a friend had manoeuvred herself round to the back of me, and then I said something that I shouldn't have said, and she hit me over the back of the head with her handbag, and I swear to God, she must have had a fucking house brick in it, because it stunned me. I went down on my knees. And then there were quite a few people in the reception and foyer, whatever, they all burst out laughing. I've never been so embarrassed in all my life. But yeah, I was a bit wild in them days.
Well, there's a few other ladies that probably wanted to hit you with their handbags after and I quote, hopefully it's right, "I've never seen a girl jump jockey better than a third-rate man." Is that something that you actually said, and do you still mean it?
I can't remember saying that, but I may have thought it. There was only 2 or 3 jump jockeys around, girl jump jockeys around, and it was a new thing for them. They actually, on reflection, they probably did ride better than I gave them credit for. Lorna Vincent was one of them, rode for the West Country trainers down there. G. Armitage, she rode a few winners as well. But there was never any match for male jockeys. But I must admit, I've had to eat humble pie, because I've just recently done some corporate work at the Cheltenham Festival, and there was 2 lady jockeys there, Bryony Frost being one of them, and Rachel Blackmore, the Irish jockey. If I'm honest, I thought they rode as good as, if not better, than quite a lot of male jockeys. So it's the standard of lady riders has improved out of all recognition. And bearing in mind when I've been retired 21 years, so we're talking about 35, 40 years ago when I'm saying this sort of thing about them. And for me, it was true. I wouldn't have said it otherwise. Now, as I say, 40 years later, these 2 girl jockeys ride as good as most men, if better than quite a few others.
Now, the jockeys of today, the sort of very strict sort of athletes, compared to you guys, I'm sure you're very fit and things back then. But you, as you said, your your lifestyle as well is just as hard as the job. Do you think if you you took a jockey from now back to when you were at your height, you guys could compete with them?
Well, yeah, you're talking about two different generations, and it's hard to compare. We were the best of our generation, okay? We didn't ride virtually 365 days a year like they do now. The amount of rides that we would have are far less than the jockeys of today. Bearing in mind, we had no Sunday racing. We didn't race in July and June. We didn't race, well, we didn't have what they called
Summer jumping?
no. Oh dear me. Agents, jockeys agents. I mean, you used to ride for your trainer, and you might get the odd ride for other trainers around if spares came up, but they didn't often. So when Frankham won the championship, and I finished second to him, I think he rode 76 winners, and I rode about 72. Well, I mean, that wouldn't put you in the top bloody 100 these days, but that's the way it was. I think the biggest transition that jockeys personally faced when it came to riding or amount of rides were the likes of Dave Roberts, the agents. And jockeys now, they don't ring up for rides. The agent tells them where they're going, what they're riding. In my day, to get a ride, to get a spare ride, you'd have to ring up about a week in advance and say, oh, I'm available at that course because I can see you've got other horses elsewhere, or your jockey's injured or whatever. They were very far and few between. So, you know, and as I said earlier, you cannot compare my age compared to today's sort of age. Two different sort of entities whatsoever.
Was race riding, do you think race riding was a lot tougher in those days?
No, not really. I mean, it's always been a hard job. There's no quarter given out there unless you're in trouble. Okay, the jocks would always look after each other. If they're on a horse who's running away with them and they're in, you know, a little bit of bother, then you look after them. But if you went sneaking up somebody's inside, you get the door slammed on you. Make no mistake. And I'm sure that happens now. The one thing I will say, I do think jockeys of today are an awful lot fitter. And because there's no drinking or whatever like that, you know, they ride sensibly. I mean, I've ridden in a race where 2 or 3 jocks have been well under the weather. But it happened. And it happened on quite a few occasions, so it was no big deal. Now, jocks of today, I mean, they'd lose a license. I'll give you an instance about me personally, right, when it came to drink. It's a wonderful story, this is, because it involves the clerk of the course, God, what's his name? Hugo Bevan, a lovely guy, great friend of mine. Hugo Bevan, at his height, he was clerk of the course for 4 tracks: Huntingdon, Worcester, Towcester and Windsor, right? And there was one particular day at Huntingdon, because I was based in Newmarket and that was my local track. Halfway through the afternoon, sleet came down, it turned into snow, not enough to put off racing, and Hugo Bevan came in. This is bearing in mind this clerk of the course, right? He came in with a bottle of whiskey and he put it on my seat. He said, make sure the boys get warmed up before they go out, Steve. Can you imagine that happened today? A clerk of the course doing that. But that's gospel truth.
Different times. And one other story we've got to touch on before we finish this is your unusual build up to the 1986 Grand National, where you woke up in the back of your car.
Ah, yeah. I must admit, I'm not proud of this story because it wasn't very professional, but it did happen, and when I've related it to a couple of people, they have smiled at it. So anyway, the story actually starts at the '86 sort of Cheltenham Festival. I have a couple of horses that won there. One on that ran 3 weeks later at the Aintree Festival, and there was 2 horses ran on the first day, and they ran well below par. I actually thought one would win, and I was a bit gutted. Now at the time I was with a young lady who just started training. I won't mention any names, and we were staying together at the Royal Hotel at Southport, right on the seafront. So I'd had a bad day at the office on Thursday, first day of the Aintree Festival, and we're driving back to the hotel. This young lady had just started training, and she informs me on the way back that we've got to go out for dinner with these owners, right? And I wasn't up for it. I'd had a bad day at the office. I only had one ride on Friday, which I had no chance, and I'd planned to go into Liverpool town itself with the Irish jocks, Tommy McGivern and all the boys. So I said, look, you go out with your owners, darling. I'll go and have a drink with the boys. I've got nothing to ride tomorrow that's any good anyway. So she didn't like that, so we had a blazing row. And the upshot was, when I left that room, the bedroom we were staying at the hotel on Thursday night, if I went into Liverpool with the Irish guys and whatever, there's no way I'm coming back to sleep in that bloody bedroom. So you can't have that, can you? Women telling you what to do and so on and so forth. So I go downstairs, and I'm in the bar, and I'm thinking about getting a taxi into town. And all of a sudden I hear, just round the corner, Ginger McCain, Red Run fame, literally 200 yards walk, around the bend, down this little street. That's where he trained. And he's throwing a party. So I thought, well, I'll compromise. I'll go to Ginger's and have a few drinks. Well, I went round there and had a few drinks and a few more, and came back to my hotel, up to the bedroom, knocked on the door, and got politely told to go and sling my hook. So what do? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You're not allowed in your bedroom. I thought, fuck it, I'll go and sleep in the car. Got a brand new Mercedes outside the front door. Right, okay, cold night. Get me overcoat, me riding out jacket, and I'm snugged up on the back seat, fast asleep. Nothing wrong with that. Anyway, it transpires about 30-40 minutes later. I come to a state of consciousness. I'm thinking, where am I? I'm in the back of my car. Yeah. Fuck me, it's moving. With this is nowhere to... I burst out from underneath all these jackets and coats, and there's a 16-year-old scouser driving my fucking Mercedes at 90 miles an hour down the M62. Now, if you think I had a shock, you should have seen him. He squealed like a stuck pig, rammed it up the fucking hard shoulder, and legged it across these fields. What do you do? Fucking if a copper comes along, Jesus Christ. How do you explain that? So I thought, oh, come on. I pulled myself together. I drove down to the next junction, got me bearings, and I drove back to the hotel, parked it outside the spot that it was in before. And this time, I took my keys out the ignition and locked the doors and went back to sleep. So luckily the next morning, my young lady, she let me get all my gear out, went to the racecourse, and as I say, I've only got the one ride, and I end up telling Johnny Buckingham, my valet. Yeah, I said, I can't believe it. Can't believe it happens. So I told Johnny. He then told somebody else, and before you know it, I'm on BBC One telling Desmond Lynham this story about me getting taken for a ride in the car. Well, I suddenly realised the track record in the Grand National for me was good at all. I'd ridden in 5 Grand Nationals and I hadn't got round. So here I am riding classified for Nicky Henderson. He was about third favourite. So I did the interview with the BBC, and I thought, oh Jesus Christ, I'm in trouble here. So anyway, that day, that Friday, the horse that I expected didn't do any good. So I then went with John and Miriam to their little hotel on the Wirral. John Frankham and Miriam, his wife. Obviously, I couldn't go back to Southport, and I was very sheepish. So early night, went to bed, and I woke up the next morning. I went down, and I had plenty of weight for my horse, so I had a bit of breakfast. And I'm sat there in the breakfast room, eating my bacon and eggs, and I'm looking around, and everybody's reading the newspapers, and the front page is staring at me, and I'm thinking, who the hell's that? Jockey taken for a ride? Jockey kidnapped? Fuck me, it's me. It made virtually the front page of every daily newspaper of that Grand National morning. I thought, well, Jesus Christ, I'm in big trouble here. Anyway, I had 3 rides that day, and they're in the first 3 races. What's its name? I went out and won the first on Cathy's Lad for Alan Jarvis, won the 2 mile handicap steeplechase. That was the first race of the day. I won that. Thank God. See You Then actually got beat, finished second in the Aintree Hurdle, but it was over 2 3/4 miles, 2 miles 6 furlongs. He didn't get a yard over 2 miles. So yeah, okay, it was beat fair and square. And Classified was my Grand National mount. And although he didn't win, he gave me a brilliant ride to finish 3rd. And I think without that, you probably wouldn't be doing this interview. He saved my bacon, Classified.
And my nan backed Young Driver each way at 66 to 1 because she read that story in the paper, which finished 2nd, didn't it?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So we've had a lot of fun. We've had a lot of fun in your career.
Yes, but as I say, I mean, people can look at this interview and think, well, Jesus, you weren't very professional. Probably not, but that's the way it was in them days. You worked hard, you played hard, and you lived for the day. And every time jump jockeys go out there, just bear this in mind, even today, they have every chance of getting injured. And I've seen some jocks with some very serious injuries in my time. I literally broke my neck. The year I broke my neck 10 days before I was due to ride Zongolero in my first Grand National, the 1979 Grand National. I broke my neck 10 days before. And I remember watching it with a collar on my neck at home, right? Bob Davis took them out and he finished 2nd. Rubstick beat him. And he jumped the last upsides in front. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. And I thought to myself, well, that was one of the simplest, easiest little falls I ever had. Who's to say that's not going to happen again sometime? And this time, without going to the edge and coming back, I go over. I was about 21 at the time. So I learned from a very early stage that it is a dangerous game.
So to conclude, you had a very successful career. You obviously enjoyed your time as a jockey.
Yep.
Is there anything in hindsight that you, looking back on, you would change if you had your time again?
Yes. Something's just sprang to mind. 1991. I used to go during the off season, June, July. I'd ride quite a bit in America, and I rode a bit for a lass called Janet Elliott, and she was assistant trainer to oh God, I can't remember his name. Anyway, I'd ridden Declare Your Wish for Janet at Fair Hill about a month before the Colonial Cup, which is America's equivalent of our Grand National. It's their biggest race. And I rode at Windsor on Saturday afternoon, flew through the night down to Camden, South Carolina, where the Colonial Cup was held, won the race, and dived into a taxi, still in my breeches and boots. I took the colours off and I got changed into my working clothes, flew back through the night to ride at Leicester on the Monday. If I could turn back the clock, I'd have stayed in America and partied for a week.
Brilliant.
Because that was the biggest race I ever won. Prize money, that's worth about 150 grand, which back in 91 was a lot of money. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, on that note, Steve Smith Eccles, thank you very much.
Thank you.